Yo, yo, what's going on, guys? What's going on? Matchweek 14. Only one game remaining. Manchester United, who kicks off. They kick off in about an hour. So, yeah, Matchweek 14, delivering. Premier League is definitely. I'm starting here with Arsenal, but the Premier League season is just now starting to take shape. And we're going to talk about some of the things that, some of the themes that are coming through in terms of like league standings, performance wise. And yeah, like the games are coming on like really fast. Very, very few days in between wait periods now. And I I'm learning how to use this new tool here. It's a JLA tactics board. And I'm using it to I guess make my videos a little bit more engaging and like have some visual anchors instead of just talking to the camera. So please give some feedback as you watch, and please, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe, share my content. I'm very, very open to feedback, and I'm trying to grow this thing, and so yes, please, as long as you're constructive, I'm happy to take on board what people have as suggestions. Arsenal played Brentford at the Emirates yesterday. I was hoping to see changes. Mikel Arteta did make changes. Not the changes that maybe I would have hoped for. I was hoping for certain changes that I didn't see. But he did match a lot of what I expect. I hoped he would do. He picked a back four of Calafiori, Incapia, Mosquera, and White. That was 75% of what I said he would do, or that I wanted him to do. I thought Calafiori would get a break, but I understand why Calafiori played, especially if he was available, because he played 45 minutes in the Chelsea game. And he has a massive height advantage that's helpful against teams like Brentford, who like to, you know, trouble you with set pieces. And so that made sense. And it worked out really well because Calafiori had himself a game. And in midfield, I thought Zubimendi would play because, again, he left the Chelsea game early. I wanted Odegaard to play, and he did play. What I didn't expect him to change, but I wanted him to change, was the use of Declan Rice, who, at the end of this game, has to walk off again, feeling something on his right calf or Achilles area. Hopefully he's okay. It seems like he is okay. Once or twice, Declan Rice has left the game looking like that, and then come back on to play the next game, basically. My hope was to not use him so much in this game because Aston Villa are the next team, and they have a lot of athletes in their team. And they had themselves a game yesterday, so at least they're not going to have a rest advantage. They're just going to have a home advantage, and hopefully that's not enough to give them too much of an advantage, of a hand over Arsenal in this game. But yes, I do like what Arteta did with making some of the changes here. And then in the front line positions, he went for Martinelli, Merino, and Madueke. I was hoping to see both of those guys on the wings in my prediction lineup. So the only things that he didn't do that I was hoping to see that are different was to basically play Miles Lewis Kelly and Christian Norgard. And that's not, world changing or life changing. And Arsenal made it hard on themselves, but they won. Arsenal won the game. It was a 2-0 win in a match week that was full of very big score lines, actually. So, like, Aston Villa won by how many goals yesterday? 4 goals, but they scored 4 goals, but the game was basically 4-3. And they came back from a 2-0 deficit. So Villa, high-scoring game, Man City, high-scoring games. Like these games now, the midweek games are just tough. So I understand why Arteta would have gone for, as much stability as he can, and you use Declan Rice, and you want to win your home games. You don't want to take for granted. So Arsenal and maybe I think the Everton game was just a low scoring game as well with a 1-0 score line. There weren't many games that ended in this game week with a clean sheet. Yes, Tuesday, Everton won against Bournemouth 1-0. Crystal Palace won against Burnley 1-0 and Wolverhampton Wanderers. Only 3 games finished with a clean sheet in them in this match week. So I understand why Mikel Arteta, wants to be using his chief lieutenants and these big guys in many of these games. However, I think it's also a problem, though, when you use your players so much and then when injuries kick in, you complain about the schedule, whereas you have players in Norgard who can play with the level of those guys who were used by Brentford yesterday. Don't tell me he would have struggled in that game. At the game, I don't want to really see him playing too many minutes, which he might have to if Rice, for example, ends up hurting himself beyond what actually happened. Now, I know many people may watch this and say, well, injuries happen in practice. Injuries can happen everywhere. However, I do think there's a level of care that a coach and a medical staff have a responsibility for towards their own players. And I think this is why, for example, Ben White has struggled for so long with injuries, who had a great game yesterday. Ben White. He was frustrating here and there, but he's a guy who hasn't had a lot of minutes. This is his second start this season in the Premier League with 14 games in. And he's played a couple of other meaningless games here and there, 60 minutes, and he finished 90 this time. But most of 2025, Ben White has hardly kicked the ball for Arsenal. He played a lot of football. He was a warrior for this team. And I know a lot of people are anxious to see him back. Me too. However, I think Mikel has a growth area when it comes to just finding that balance between what's overuse and what's running with the hot hand. Like it's okay to not change things too frequently, like Maresca does, for example. He will change a lot throughout the week. I don't think that's the answer, but I do think there are ways where, if you're not going to change your starters week in, week out, then against Tottenham, when you're 3-0 up and you have a 3-goal advantage with a half an hour to go, make changes. I think there's something there that's missing for me in the way Arteta manages his squad. I love a lot about what he does. He's, for me, the right guy to lead our club beyond, where he found Arsenal and where Arteta is taking Arsenal. I wouldn't dare question the man's ability to coach. However, his management of the resources he has is where I'm kind of like thinking he can do better. I think he needs to be surrounded by people who are a little bit stronger, who can challenge him when he doesn't do that part, because he will ride the hot hand all the way. Anyway, I need to stop talking about this Arteta part, but like that's the one concern I have, and I'm happy he did make the changes in the starting 11. Because if you're going to have a squad that's durable, you need to stop making changes when you're forced by injury. It was nice to see Timber get a break. Unfortunately, he had to come in before the first half was over. But at least he was playing centre-back versus playing on the right flank where he has to do a lot more sprinting. So he was able to kind of like have a practice session there. He didn't have a lot to do. He looked good, but he didn't have too much to do. So I do think Arsenal have to figure out a way of like keeping this rotation going on. So for example, Merino is playing here. I think at the weekend, you might want to, use Merino in midfield and play Gyökeres or someone else up top. Gyökeres or Martin. No, actually, I don't think Trossard will be back. So like, gonna have to be Gyökeres if it's not Merino at this point. But like, yes, this is a good bench here. Like you have Norgard, you have Gyökeres, you have Eze, you have Jesus, I guess you could give him minutes, but I don't think away at Aston Villa is where you start him. No way. Um, and I think this back four now is going to have to be the back four, basically Timber at right center back with Ben White over here. And then you kind of have to ride it for the next couple games. Maybe you can change him because he's also injury prone, to give him some breaks. That might be, because he's also now going to be your cover at center back if you can keep him healthy. So Calafiore might need to be kept healthy for that alone, that he can do a lot more roles, whereas Miles at the moment seems to be only trusted as a left back. So we're going to need to use the depth of our squad. We already have been, but a lot of it has been forced onto Arteta by injury. What else happened in the Premier League? Chelsea. I think what happened with Chelsea, I don't want to overreact here. I think what happened with Chelsea is what happened with Arsenal the week that Arsenal had to play Chelsea. I think Leeds were to Chelsea what Chelsea were to Arsenal. When you have 3 games that are kind of like within a 7-day stretch, all these games are high intensity, and then the last game you play is against Leeds in this case, who are fighting for their lives. They're fighting for their Premier League lives, and Daniel Farke is at risk of getting the sack. So I understand Leeds' role in the game, and Leeds played well. I don't think Chelsea were bad. I just think there's just so much football. You're playing every 3 days. They had a good result against Barcelona, and I think they had a bit more of an advantage in the Barca and especially Arsenal game because the week before they had played an easier opponent in Burnley. All respect to Burnley, they were an easier opponent. So at the beginning of what would be an exciting week, and so they peaked against Arsenal. And then, and the manager had to make changes, and I respect that he did. He said straight after the Arsenal game that Reece James wouldn't play against Leeds because they have to manage him. So he did what he could, and he had good enough players to win that game. But I think Chelsea suffered from having played Barca, even though it was 10 men, and then Arsenal. That's 2 highly emotional games and physically demanding games. And so when you go away to Leeds and they are up for it, and Chelsea and Leeds, there's no love lost between those 2 teams. They don't like each other. It's a well-known fact. And so, Leeds did what they needed to do. They made the game into a spectacle. They let Chelsea have the ball. A lot of it was game state, but Leeds made sure that they protected their goal. They gave away less than 1 XG. They had a 2.79 XG, and Chelsea had 71% ball possession. Doesn't matter when the other team scores 3 and you score 1. So Leeds, they make themselves hard to beat. They set up in what looked like a 3-5-2. And, Straub, Bihal, and Joe Rodon. And then you had Ampadu Tanaka, who scored a brilliant goal to give Leeds a 2-goal lead. And then they start with Mecha and Calvert-Lewin. Calvert-Lewin, he's finding fitness, and Leeds is kind of a perfect team, to be honest, for a guy like him. Because, he's going to get a lot more looks in terms of opportunities to play. He needs to feel loved. He's had quite a rough go with injuries, and then Everton were trying to also kind of go beyond his level of talent in terms of the talents they were buying. They didn't always buy well, but they were quite ambitious. Whereas Leeds are in a perfect part of their journey for him to be useful to them for now, and see if he can, resurrect his professional career in the top flight in England. And he gets a goal as well. Error by Chelsea. I don't know what Tosin was trying to do, but it looks like he's trying to play a back pass. He's given a bad ball to begin with. Sometimes this playing out from the back is for me, is a bit much. With a lot of these teams always trying to do that, rather than sometimes you just gotta hit it long sometimes and live with the coach yelling at you at halftime or something like that. But sometimes you just really have to protect your goal and kick the ball long. And so that was a high-scoring game that I didn't expect. Another high-scoring game was on Tuesday. Manchester City 5, Fulham 4. This game is a hard one to read because City were 5-1 up at one point, and then they were running away with the game, and it looked like it was done, and everybody was talking that way. And Pep, fair play to him, he was humorous in his post-match conference as well. Like he was like, at 5-1, no one would have seen the game that was to come after that. All of you are probably writing your articles. Manchester City are back. And then by the 80th minute, you having to throw that draft into the garbage because the game had changed so much. And Fulham, crazy enough, they finished the game with more of the ball than City. And City, 43% possession, but they had better XG than Fulham. But Fulham's were able to make a game out of this. Fair play to Chukwueze. Smith Rowe, who was big at the beginning, the first one to begin the fight back. He gets replaced by that very impressive young kid, Josh King. And Fulham, I mean, this is a loss, right? And there's no two ways about it. It's a loss. But this game, I think, is going to give a lot of encouragement to play teams that are going to play against Manchester City. That, like, they've won in this game and the one against Leeds at home, by the way. They've shown vulnerabilities. They've conceded 6 goals in the last 2 games. Now, they've scored 8. So they win on aggregate 6-8. 2 very narrow wins, 1-goal wins in a 5-goal thriller at the weekend, and then a 9-goal thriller to follow it up. City and Pep, they will take the wins, but I don't think they're going to be loving what happened in this game. There's no way. Pep is too much of an obsessive-driven manager in that way. They looked good for the game. Like, I don't know what happened here. Like, maybe the weather conditions as well. Maybe some players were playing with a bit more of okay, this one is one. Like, we're gonna manage ourselves physically, and that's all it takes in some of these Premier League games is a few percentage drops in effort defensively, and then that can maybe sometimes affect your offensive play as well. When you're not finding ways to stop your opponents, and they score with like their next 3 or 4 attempts at goal, and they score 2 to 3 goals. Like, that's freakish. Goals, as it's well known, right? Goals change the momentum of games. And when it went from 5-1 to 5-2 to 5-3, makings of a Fulham comeback were written all over the place. Manchester City didn't seem to have answers for them, to be honest. This game could have been 5-5. There was a late opportunity for Fulham to complete the 5-5. It's not that City didn't have chances to score. They did, but you just can't play with your food in the Premier League, and that's what this is kind of teaching us. Another game of interest was Aston Villa Brighton. I think that one, man, Unai Emery's Aston Villa is a strange team. They continually outperform their underlying numbers. They are, and this happened with Emery, his first 22, 23 games at Arsenal, where he was getting the team over the line. And I don't know, maybe they're going to at some point start trending in a different direction. But I'm looking at like their XGs and all of that kind of stuff. It looks very different to what I'm seeing from Fulham. I'm sorry, from Villa in games. I don't see them, how do I say this without sounding like I'm salty or offending Don Unai? When I look at the underlying numbers of all the teams in the Premier League, what I see is Aston Villa. Let me find my table real quick, because I have this. I've been looking at this before I came live to record. Aston Villa, on the XG table, they are outside of the top 10. But let me fact check myself and not give you guys fake news, because I never wanted a table. XG table. They are sitting number 15th on the XG table. Now, football is not played on statistics alone, right? But they tell you a story. So Aston Villa, they are number 15. They are 12 points higher than what their actual performance in these games that they've played. In the first 14 games, their performance is 12 points higher than what they should be. I don't know if that makes sense, but like they have created on XG right here, they're overperforming their XG in terms of the XG they give away and the XG that they create. So they basically conceding less than they should. They expected to concede more goals than they've conceded right now. They've conceded 15, 19 goals. No, I'm doing this wrong. They have supposed to have conceded, they've conceded 14 goals and they were supposed to concede 19. And they've scored 20 goals and they were supposed to, based on XG, they were supposed to score 14.3. So they are 5 points better in both XG conceded, XG against, and XG that they've created. They're 5 points better off. No other team has that level of overperformance in XG. So, like, fair play to them. I mean, Tottenham, I guess they also overperform their XG quite a bit, but like not the same level as Villa. But the cool thing is, like, the table is not on XG. The table is on wins and losses. How many 3 points have you accumulated? And Villa have done a good job. They are right now, the most informed team in the Premier League. They have the longest win streak at 4 wins in a row in the Premier League. And City have won 4 of their last 5 games, but not in a row because they lost that game to Aston Villa, actually, a few weeks ago. I think they lost 1-0 to Aston Villa, and that was 3 games ago. And then Arsenal have won 3 of their last 5, but the 2 draws, Sunderland and Chelsea, have them on the form table sitting 3rd in the Premier League. So, you have a very freakishly weird team in there, and they find a way to win games. That's one thing you can't lie about with Aston Villa. And they did at Brighton too. They went there, they were 2-0 down, and Emi Martinez gets injured in the warm-ups. Yet, they found a way. It was a game where they were going to score, because they haven't been scoring a lot, Villa. They won 1-0 over the weekend against struggling Wolves. And yet, they go to a much better team in Brighton and score 4. There's just a mad team, Aston Villa. They are mad, like nuts. And Unai Emery always has, he always has a way, especially when he plays against Arsenal. It doesn't matter who the team is coaching, whether it's Villarreal or Aston Villa. He finds a way when Arsenal show up or when he turns up at the Emirates with any team. And so they will show up prepared. I don't expect them to concede 4 goals at home to Arsenal, but they've been doing quite well, Aston Villa, in terms of finding answers. I can't lie about that. I just think at some point, though, they either need to start getting their underlyings correct, or this is going to catch up with them for Arsenal's sake, and my sake, for my weekend's sake, because it's a really early kickoff. My hope is that Saturday is the day, but you can't ever be sure what football is going to deliver on the day. But with Emi Martinez being in doubt, it might swing things a little bit Arsenal's way. And if Declan Rice is unavailable, that's going to be big for Aston Villa. But the signs right now is that Declan Rice will be fine, but you can't really know until they walk out of the tunnel and he starts the game, because players now, they also get injured in warm-ups, like Saliba at Anfield, like Emi Martinez in Villa's last game. So it's going to be a hard one this weekend for Arsenal away at Villa. But I don't think it's going to be an easy outing for Aston Villa too. The unfortunate thing now is that most teams, when they play Arsenal, they go with the mindset of, we're playing with house money. They need to win. The pressure is on them, which is true. Pressure is on Arsenal. In most games Arsenal goes into, they have to instigate. Arsenal has to be the protagonist, even though they're good. They are their away team in most of the games that they play. Look at what happened at Chelsea, for example. The celebrations at the end of the game and all the talk was about how great Chelsea were. So unfortunately, you don't get to feel sorry for yourself, for Arsenal and Mikel Arteta. You just have to now like Thierry Henry said beautifully, you have to embrace being the favorite. You have to walk with chest and 10 feet, 10 toes down. That's what people say, right? 10 toes down and chest and base. Arsenal have to just embrace it and keep going, because there's no one who's going to care why you didn't win this game and why you didn't win the league when it's all said and done at the end of May. This is the best chance you have. Just stop the injury crisis, though. Like, that needs to stop. You get one player back and then another one has to go out. That can't continue for Arsenal. 14 games. This has been the biggest I've seen in terms of injuries in a 14-game stretch. I've never seen a team like just from the beginning of the season. The number of injuries that have accumulated in this Arsenal squad, and many of them they are not like you miss a game and you're back in a game. No. They go on for a month to 2 months, nearly 3 months. Kai Havertz has hardly played. He played as a sub first game of the season. We haven't seen him again. And it might be 2026 before Arsenal sees Kai Havertz again. You sign Gyökeres injured after he had to take time to build himself up to fitness whilst playing in the eyes of the world. In big Premier League away games, he was building his fitness. He gets finally fit and he's in a groove with his new teammates. Gets injured. And now we have to integrate him back again. I don't know where Arsenal would be without Mikel Merino because of that. Like, no fit striker at the moment. Jesus is barely coming back. Gyökeres, a shorter injury, but he's coming back as well. And you have who we don't know when he's going to play. It's going to be 5 months by the time he comes back. So it's going to be February, March before we see Kai Havertz probably play good football. And that's if he stays available after he comes back in the new year, maybe. And so that's the one thing that Arsenal have to really watch out for, if I'm being honest. I'm not worried about whatever tactics teams can bring. I'm not worried about teams getting physical and kicking the boys. I'm not worried about being tiki-taka out of any game. We can play any style of football. My big worry for Arsenal is, can we keep enough of these boys healthy? Can we? Because if we can do that, good luck. Good luck stopping this team. If Arsenal really, I don't think they even need the whole squad healthy. They just need to not have 5-6 players out at a time for majority of the season. I don't even care which players that are injured. Like, it just needs to be, 3 at a time, 2 here and there, because it's unsustainable to have that many players out and you're playing every 3 days. And that's what happens when, again, so this is the part where I'm mad at the schedule, I'm not going to lie, but I also think there's some things we can do internally to mitigate. And Arteta, I hope, as much as he's saying publicly one thing, I hope privately he is really being self-critical as much as he can about the overusage of certain players in the team. And I know they're important players, but my goodness, you have to find ways to make sure that you have a peaking Declan Rice in March. You have a good, core of players that are not tapering off in the spring like we've had the previous 4 or so seasons under Mikel. But I understood those seasons because we didn't have quality backups. But now the team has quality backups. He's been given the tools to rest some of these players. And so he needs to take ownership of that. He needs to really figure out where those best opportunities are to lean into Norgard, lean into. Mikel Merino is now showing, actually, because I don't think Mikel Merino plays this much if there are no injuries. But he is now showing that even when people are back, he should be playing. And so I think there are other players in the squad who are capable. Otherwise, why are they in the squad? You can't carry passengers to a league title. That's just recipe for disaster. So please, let's make sure we use our squad. And if we do that, we're going to be just fine. But to make a long story long, I'm going to end this one here because I'm going to watch Manchester United and see what Ruben Amorim is cooking up for us. Is it a W? Is it a draw? Is it a loss? West Ham, though, they're a bit sus. So I think I like Manchester United for a win in this one. But I'm not going to complain if West Ham and Nuno decide to end match week 14 with a win for themselves because, relegation is a thing. And they got to fight for their Premier League lives and that. And too many of my friends are Manchester United fans. West Ham, Nuno, counting on you, brother. Please just make some people smile. But, if they win, I won't hear the end of it. And I'm sure my Manchester loving friends will clip me up and make fun of me. I did say I expect a Manchester United win, but it's not going to stop me from laughing if they don't win. I expect them to win this one because it's United and they have better players and they're feeling themselves and they've been longer with their manager because that's the excuse everybody uses when they play Arsenal, right? They're 6 years together. We just bought 8 players in the summer. So anyway, I'm going to let you guys go and try to get this podcast out. Please like, share, subscribe, and all the things that podcasters like from watchers, observers, listeners. Please, it helps to get the support, whether it's through a like or a subscription. It's free subscription. So yeah, I'll talk to you guys on the next one. Cheers for now. Ta-da.